Hello everybody. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing computing variance and standard deviation in Rguroo. So let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. Okay. So the first thing we have to consider when we're talking about variance and standard deviation is that there's two different numbers for variance and standard deviation, the sample version and the population version. So depending on if you have a sample or population, the answer is going to change. So we have to be aware of the scenario and consider whether we're dealing with a sample or a population. So here we took 5 students out of an entire class, so that's going to be a sample since it's not the whole class, it's just a part of the class. So we're going to be finding the sample, variance, and standard deviation. I'm going to show you how to do that on Rguroo. All right, so under 2.6.3 and 2.8.3, we have some downloadable data sets. So this one is the number of classes data set, so I'll go ahead and download that. Then I'll go to Rguroo, data import, import data set, choose my file from my downloads folder. And then, so remember, you put header first line if there's a title on the first line. All of my data sets have a title on the first line. Be careful on Newton if it does or not. If it doesn't, then you would put no header. But for all of my data sets, there will be a title. And then I hit upload. All right, there's our data set. So now to find the variance and standard deviation, we're going to go to the same place we did to find the mean, median, mode, and 5-number summary. So analytics, analysis, and numerical summaries. I'm going to select my data set, and then I'm going to move my variable over, go to univariate, and then check mean and sample standard deviation. And, oops, I'm sorry, not mean. I don't know why I said mean. Sample variance and sample standard deviation sets as a sample. And then hit the eyeball, and there's our answers. And that's all you have to do. If you wish to save it, then you would put a title here and hit save as. All right, let's do another one. So we'll do this one now. So in a class of 20 students, all 20 students are asked their age. So since it's everybody in the class, that's going to be a population. So we're going to find the variance and standard deviation for this data set, this time considering that it's a population. So let's go ahead and start on that. So I'm going to go ahead and start by closing everything out up top here. I'm going to go under data and then right click on the data set and delete. Okay. So now I'm going to go under, oops, well, I need to download the data set off Blackboard first. It's the age data set. Then I'm going to go to data, data import, import data set, choose the file from my downloads folder. And then once again, for all my data sets, there is going to be a title on the first line. If you have to double check that on the homework, and then hit upload. Okay, there's my data set. Then I'm going to go to analytics, analysis, numerical summaries, select my data set, select my variable and move it over, univariate. So this was a population, so I'm going to do population, variance, and standard deviation. Hit the eyeball, and there are our answers. All right, let's do another one. All right, so we have 10 people at a large concert, and they're asked to rate the concert on a scale from 1 to 10. And then there's the results. So that's 10 people out of a whole concert, so that's a sample. So let's go ahead and find the variance and standard deviation now. All right, so let me close out everything I have here. Right click and delete. All right, go under back to Blackboard and then download the concert rating data set. and then data import, import data set, choose my file from my downloads. The header on the first line is always fine for mine. Just make sure there's a title on the first line on Newton. Hit upload. There we go. And then analytics, analysis, numerical summaries. Select my data set, move my variable over, univariate, and then it was a sample, so sample variance and standard deviation. Hit the eyeball, there's our answers. All right, so now let's do one more like this with a frequency table. That's just going to be a little bit different, but basically the same. So we have 20 students in a large class are sampled and asked how many siblings they have. So it's 20 students out of a large class, so it is a sample. So we're going to go ahead and download this frequency table and find the variance and standard deviation on Rguroo. All right, let me go ahead and close everything out here. Right click and delete. All right, and then I'm going to go to download the number of siblings data set, and then data import and import data set. Choose the file from my downloads folder. And then the header on the first line is fine for all my data sets. Hit upload. All right, and now analytics, analysis, numerical summaries. Select my data set. So the data value variable, which is the number of siblings, so that's the variable that gives all the different data values, is going to be moved over to selected, and we're going to select the frequency down here. Then the same process, univariate, select sample variance and sample standard deviation since it was a sample. Hit the eyeball, and there are our answers. Okay, so let's now talk about a couple where, so there's some problems you're going to be seeing in the homework where you're going to be calculating z-scores, but before you do that, you're going to have to compute the sample mean and sample standard deviation for the two different data sets. So I'm going to show you how to do that part on Rguroo, and then the notes show you the rest of the steps of how to do the z-scores. That won't be in this video, that's all step-by-step in the notes, but I'm going to show you how to do the part on Rguroo. So I'm going to go ahead and share the first example here that I'm referring to. All right, so before we do anything with z-scores, I need to find the sample mean and sample standard deviation for each of these samples. And I know they're samples because we only took 10 runners out of all the runners at the schools. So I need to find the sample mean and sample standard deviation for each of the data sets so that I can plug all that into the z-score formula. So let me go ahead and do that on Rguroo. All right, so let me go ahead and close all this out here. So right click and delete. And then I'll download the 100-meter dash time data set. And then data import, import data set. Choose the file from my downloads folder. The header on the first line is always fine for my data sets. Hit upload. Okay, so notice this is two different data sets. This is not a frequency table. So we're going to want the mean and the sample standard deviation for each one separately. So to do that, we'll go back to analysis and numerical summaries. Select my data set. Now, instead of selecting one of the variables of frequency, I'm going to select them both because I want the mean and the sample standard deviation for both. Then I'm going to go to univariate, and I want the mean and the sample standard deviation since they're samples. Hit the eyeball. I can see here school A has a mean standard deviation here. School B's mean and standard deviations here. And then with that information, I can compute the z-scores. So I'm not going to show all that, like just calculation stuff. It's just simply plugging the numbers into the formula. All that is step by step in the notes. So you can follow the rest of how the problem was finished in the step-by-step in the notes. So let me go ahead and stop my share now. And we'll do one more like that. So same thing here. We have samples of 15 students from each class. So it's not everybody in the class, just 15 people out of the classes. So that's going to be samples. So I'm going to take a sample. I need the mean and the sample standard deviation for each of the classes in order to plug those numbers into the z-score formula. So I'm going to go ahead and do that again. I'm going to go ahead and clear everything out we just did. Right click and delete. And then I'm going to download this here, the test score data set, data import, import data set, choose the file from my downloads folder here. The header on the first line is always fine for mine. Then hit upload. There we go. Analysis, numerical summaries. Select my data set. And now remember, I'm selecting both variables here because I want the mean and the standard deviation for both. And then univariate, check mean, and sample standard deviation since they are samples. Hit the eyeball. And then for class A, here's my mean and standard deviation. For class B, here's my mean and standard deviation. And then one more thing I want to discuss here before we end this video. So on the Newton homework, you're going to see two different things. Let me actually pull up the Newton homework here real quick so I can show you what I'm referring to. So in section, I believe 2.8.3, you're going to see downloadable data sets, but you will not see that in 2.6.3. So I'm going to explain just as a reminder how to enter the data real quick. Okay, so let's talk about 2.8.3 first. So for these, let me share my screen here. So for these, you are going to see downloadable data sets. Remember, you download the CSV, and then you import it the same way that we did the ones off Blackboard. But for 2.6.3, that's where we're going to run into a bit of an issue. Not necessarily an issue, but just a different way we need to approach it. So 2.6.3, notice it's giving you data sets that it's not giving you them in like a downloadable table. So you're going to have to put in these numbers by hand. So I'm going to put in, so these are salaries for employees at a startup company. So if you open a new data set, so let me close this one out here. So data import, create new data set. That's fine. And then you can enter all your numbers here. So if you want to edit the title of the variable, you can. You can hit these three lines and hit rename, call it whatever you want. I'll call it salaries. And then you just need to enter all the numbers in the boxes. So 55, oops. So enter the first number, and then to get to the next cell, you can enter in the down arrow, 59, enter down arrow, etc. So 63, enter down arrow, 67, enter down arrow, 71, enter down arrow, and then 75. Once you finish entering all the numbers, you can name it here and then hit save as, and then you'll be able to proceed with the numerical summary. So just be aware there will be a couple like that in the Newton homework. All right, so that is calculating variance and standard deviation in Rguroo. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.